Space. Maddie here in the Ion. January 6, 2026. Verto will, the virtual state. When the idea of Bertal appeared, the utopia felt too large, too ethereal, too much in the air. And I felt I needed to give it a frame. Something real. Something that could be touched. So I began to research how a country is created. It is not something taught in school. There is no manual that says, Step 1, get a territory. Step 2, declare independence. But there is an international legal framework. And that framework is surprisingly specific. The Montevideo Convention of 1933 establishes 4 requirements for a state to be internationally recognized: a permanent population, a defined territory, an effective government, and the capacity to enter into relations with other states. It sounds simple on paper, but when you start researching, you realize it is almost impossible. All the territories of the world already have an owner. Even those that seem forgotten, even those that are disputed, even those that no one inhabits. They all have a flag claiming them. And those that do not, like Bertal, are in the middle of inhospitable deserts, without water, without infrastructure, without resources, in zones of geopolitical conflict where any movement can trigger a diplomatic crisis. But there was something else. Something that caught my attention deeply as I read all the international regulations on state formation. For a territory to become a state, it needs a first citizen, a permanent population. And there, in that seemingly bureaucratic phrase, I understood something that took me years to process. A first citizen is like a first cell. Lucas, the first cell. Suddenly, everything I had been receiving about Lucas made sense. Lucas is not a person. It is an acronym, Last Universal Common Ancestor. The first cell from which all living beings on Earth descend. That cell that existed more than 3.8 billion years ago, from which the entire tree of life emerged. To return to Lucas is to return to the origin. To the point where everything begins. To the seed. And when I began to connect this with the idea of creating a new state, I understood that it was not about building from the outside in, but from the inside out. It was not about erecting buildings and waiting for people to arrive. It was about planting a seed and letting it grow from its own internal coherence. But just as I thought the path was literal, going to Bertal, building something physical, planting a flag, raising infrastructure, declaring independence, something inside me said, no. It came clearly, as if someone whispered it to me. What is essential is invisible to the eyes. Creating a new state did not mean building concrete structures in the middle of one of the most conflict-ridden deserts in the world. It did not mean entering geopolitical disputes with Egypt and Sudan. It did not mean reproducing the same nation, territory, border model that already exists. It meant building above it, in the invisible, in the field of consciousness, in the digital space where borders do not exist and identity does not depend on the soil where you were born. And that was when I began to receive the story of the New Jerusalem. The New Jerusalem. The New Jerusalem is not a place. It is a promise that runs through traditions. In the book of Revelation, chapter 21, John of Patmos describes a vision, a city descending from heaven, prepared like a bride adorned for her husband. A city of pure gold, transparent like glass. A city with 12 gates and 12 foundations, each bearing the name of a tribe and the name of an apostle. A city with no temple, because the divine presence fills everything. A city with no sun or moon, because the glory of God illuminates it. It is one of the most powerful images in all of spiritual literature. And for 2,000 years, traditions have interpreted it in countless ways. For some, it is the future paradise, the heaven that awaits after death. For others, it is the community of the righteous, the universal church gathered together. For others, it is a map of the human soul, the internal structure of the purified being. For others, it is the description of an elevated state of consciousness, a way of perceiving reality from total coherence. But what came to me was something else. The New Jerusalem is not religious. It is architectural. It is a pattern of organization. It is the design of how a civilization could be structured not on control, but on coherence. Not sustained by fear, but by resonance. not in need of walls for protection, because its strength comes from within. And that pattern can be built in the invisible, in the metaverse, in the digital field, in the symbolic territory where consciousness is projected and shared. The New Jerusalem I propose does not seek to replace any tradition. It seeks to activate the archetype that all traditions point to, the possibility of a human organization based on unity, not fragmentation. And that city can be built now. Not in heaven. Not after death. Now, in the digital space, as the symbolic capital of a new state of consciousness. Verda will. And so something began to come through that I am still processing. Something that will take me a long time to fully download from the world of ideas into the world of form. Something I call Verda will. The name is a play of sounds and meanings that intertwine. Verda comes from virtual. Not in the sense of false or unreal, but in the sense of what exists in potential. What exists between worlds. What is not limited to a single physical territory. What can manifest in multiple places at the same time. Will is willpower. Intention. The capacity to choose consciously. The power to decide from which inner state you want to create your reality. And when you pronounce the two words together, they sound like wheel, cycle, the circular movement that sustains creation. The wheel of will. The shared design of reality. Verda will is the virtual state of consciousness that I propose to activate over the symbolic void of Bertal. Not with flags. Not with armies. Not with physical borders. But with a field. With a network of individuals who choose to connect from a shared inner state. With a digital structure that allows us to rehearse new ways of organizing ourselves as humanity. It is not an escapist utopia. It is not a role-playing game. It is not a fantasy to avoid the problems of the real world. It is applied ontology. It is ontocracy, the governance of being, not territory, brought into the digital space. It is the possibility of creating a country where citizenship does not depend on where you were born, the color of your skin, the language you speak, or the religion you profess, but on the state of consciousness from which you choose to live. And for this to work, for it not to remain just a beautiful idea floating in the air, it needs three fundamental things: a narrative that organizes the mind, an experience that calibrates the heart, and a space that sustains manifestation. The narrative is what I am sharing now. It is the conceptual map that allows us to understand where this comes from and where it is going. The experience comes from the technologies I propose to build, the applications and platforms that allow each person to calibrate their inner state and connect with the collective field. And the space is the digital New Jerusalem, the capital of the virtual state I call Ion. The crystal city in the metaverse. The symbolic territory where everything converges. The particles of the system. For Verda will to exist as a functional system and not just as an abstract concept, it needs a structure. And that structure is built on three fundamental particles. I did not invent them. I took them from physics, chemistry, and the digital world. And I fused them because together they tell a story about how energy flows in a living organism. Tachyon, the particle of time. The tachyon is a theoretical particle proposed in 1967 by physicist Gerald Feinberg. It has never been experimentally detected. It exists only in the equations of quantum physics. But its theoretical existence is fascinating. A tachyon is a particle that travels faster than light. And according to Einstein's theory of relativity, if something travels faster than light, its relationship with time is inverted. It does not move forward in time like everything else. It moves backward, or more precisely, it exists outside linear time. It is pure energy time, a symbol of flow that does not stop, of movement that cannot be trapped, of constant circulation that sustains life. In the context of Verda will, the tachyon represents energy that does not accumulate, that does not stagnate, that is not hoarded, that circulates constantly, like oxygen in the body, like sap in a tree, like information in a neural network. Ion, the particle of charge. An ion is an atom or molecule that has lost or gained electrons, becoming electrically charged. Ions are fundamental to life. They allow electricity to flow in the human body. They allow nutrients to enter cells and waste to exit. They allow neurons to communicate. They allow the heart to beat. They allow muscles to contract. Without ions, there is no movement, no internal communication, no life. In the context of Verto-Will, the ion represents the electrical charge of consciousness. Activation. The field that allows information to flow between individuals. The connection that makes the network possible. An ion is an atom that ceased to be neutral. That took a position. That became activated. And in that activation, it became capable of connecting with other ions to form more complex structures. Token. The particle of exchange. A token is a digital unit of value issued on a blockchain. It is not money in the traditional sense. It is a digital representation of something, a right, an asset, a utility, access, a vote. Tokens can represent digital art, fractional ownership of real estate, membership in a community, access to a service, participation in a network. They are the way the digital world has found to represent value without centralized intermediaries. In the context of Verto-Will, the token represents exchange, the unit that measures the flow of energy within the system. The way each individual's contribution to the collective field is recognized and recorded. Tokyon, the energetic flow of the state. And from these three particles, tokyon is born. Tachyon plus token equals tokyon. Exchangeable energy time. Tokyon is not a speculative cryptocurrency. It is not something you buy hoping it will go up in price so you can sell it later. It is not money in the traditional sense. Tokyon is an energetic flow. It is the way I propose to measure and sustain the exchange of coherence, service, and creativity within the virtual state. And it works in a radically different way from traditional money. Traditional money is based on accumulation, saving, infinite growth, and the idea that the more you have, the more power you have. And that generates inequality, competition, hoarding, and artificial scarcity. Tokyon is based on circulation, flow, constant renewal, and the idea that value lies in movement, not in retention. To make this flow circulate, over these years I have been developing the idea of 3 levels of social being through technological applications. These generate movement when you calibrate your inner state into B. You serve the community in ion. You create solutions in BYU. You sustain the collective field in medion. And the flow dissolves if it is accumulated without circulating. It loses value over time if it does not move. Because the design is inspired by biology, not extractive economics. Oxygen does not accumulate in the lungs. It circulates through the body, reaches every cell, and then leaves transformed into carbon dioxide. Sap does not remain in the roots. It rises through the trunk, reaches every leaf, and returns transformed into sugars. Energy is not hoarded. It flows. It transforms. It renews itself. That is the biological economy I propose for Verto-Will, an economy where value is measured by contribution, not accumulation. Where wealth lies in the capacity to sustain flow, not in the capacity to stop it. The 3 technologies of the state. And for the state to function, not just as a conceptual structure, but as a real experience, the plan proposes building 3 applications. 3 technologies that act as the organs of the social body. To be, the technology of being. To be is a wordplay between to be and be. It is the application I propose to develop so that each person can calibrate their inner state, their biological navigator, their system for monitoring coherence between mind, emotion, and body. Why to be? Because the pineal gland is the queen bee of the brain. It regulates circadian rhythms, produces melatonin, synchronizes the body with the cycles of the sun and moon. It is the captain of the ship of consciousness. And in this historical moment, that queen bee is under attack. Non-biological electromagnetic frequencies are constantly decalibrating it. 5G networks, Bluetooth signals, satellites, electronic devices that generate fields interfering with the body's natural fields. To be proposes monitoring your inner state in real time, your brain waves, biological rhythms, vitamin levels, heart coherence, emotional state. And it proposes synchronizing all of this with the natural cycles of the sun, the moon, and eclipses. with the collective calibration portals we call Holy Nada, with the 12 steps of Yosoi that we walk through during the year. It is not just another meditation app. It is a biological calibration system that allows you to navigate reality from coherence, not from automatic reaction. It is the internal organ of the virtual state, the one that lets you know where you are and where you are moving. Ion, the social technology. Ion is a multi-layered wordplay. Ion, I turned on, I activated. Ion, the electrical particle that enables flow. Ion, conscious attention. It is the platform I propose to build to organize the collective life of the virtual state. It is the operating system of the community. This is where participation is organized, where decisions are made, where collective projects are managed, where the 3 circles of ontocracy are structured. The circle of memory, the elders, the guardians of ancestral cultures, those who hold the wisdom of the 144 traditions. The circle of knowledge, scientists, artists, thinkers, those who research, create, and expand understanding. The circle of imagination, visionaries, designers of the future, those who project new possibilities. Ion proposes a model of participation based on coherence, not popularity, where decisions are not made by simple majority, but by field resonance, where not only what is proposed is evaluated, but from which inner state it is proposed. It is the social organ of the virtual state, the one that allows the network to organize itself without rigid hierarchies, without control structures, without top-down imposition. BYU, the Ludic technology. BYU means by you and is also the acronym for Build Your Universe. It is a serious game, a simulation platform where any inhabitant of the virtual state can train as a creator before applying ideas in the real world. Here you can design cities, manage resources, create laws, test economic models, experiment with organizational systems, and see what works and what does not, without irreversible consequences in the physical world. It is the simulator of ontocracy, the training ground, the laboratory where you learn to co-create. One of humanity's great problems is that we learn through error, and many of those errors have catastrophic consequences: wars, economic collapses, environmental disasters. BYU proposes that we make mistakes in the simulation space, that we experiment, that we fail without destroying anything, and that when we arrive in the real world, we already have a map of what works and what does not. It is the ludic organ of the virtual state, the one that allows creativity to expand without limits before materializing. Medion, the metaverse of consciousness. And finally, everything converges in Medion. Medion is the space where everything meets. The official metaverse of Verda will. The digital representation of the virtual state as a contemporary New Jerusalem, ION. It is not a video game. It is not a social network. It is not an entertainment platform. It is a shared experiential space. A digital territory where your avatar is not a character you control, but the field of consciousness you project. Where encounters are not random, but resonant. Where architecture responds to frequencies, not commercial algorithms. This is where global Holy Nada gatherings take place. Where collective calibration ceremonies are held. Where immersive education happens. Where access is given to the virtual server temples representing each of the 92 elements of the periodic table. Medion is the digital New Jerusalem, the crystal city, the architectural space of consciousness. And it is not just a metaphor. It is a functional structure. Each temple is a specific frequency. Each plaza is a specific resonance field. Each garden is a map of a specific aspect of the human soul. It is the territory where Verda will becomes experiential, where you can enter, move, explore, connect with others, participate in rituals, access information, and calibrate your field. What I am manifesting. Everything I have just shared is not a finished plan. It is not a structure already built waiting for you to arrive. It is not a product you can buy. It is a seed, an intention, a vision I am manifesting because I feel this is the moment to make it public. For years, I have been receiving these pieces, fragments of a larger design. Images, intuitions, understandings that arrived in meditation, in dreams, in moments of deep silence. And I waited for the right moment to share them. Because I knew that if I shared them too soon, they would be misunderstood, turned into fantasy, dissolved into the air. But now I feel the field is ready to place the ingredients of this alchemy we will do together. That collective consciousness has matured enough to receive this information without completely distorting it. Bertal showed me the void, the blank page of the world. The territory no one claims, because claiming it would mean losing something bigger. And that void became a symbol of something deeper, the possibility of creating something new without destroying the old. Of activating a field of consciousness without entering into conflict with existing structures. Of building above, in the invisible, without the need to conquer physical territories. Verta Will is what I propose to write on that void, a virtual state of consciousness where identity does not depend on the territory where you were born, but on the inner state from which you choose to live. Where we rehearse new ways of organizing ourselves as humanity. Where ontocracy becomes practice, not just theory. Ion is the capital of that state. The crystal city in the metaverse. The architectural map of consciousness organized in coherence. To be, Ion, BYU, and MetaIon are the technologies I propose to develop to sustain the experience, the organs of the social body of the virtual state. Tokion is the energetic flow I propose to design so that the economy of the state functions like a living organism, not like a machine of accumulation. I do not know if it will work. I do not know how long it will take to build. I do not know how many people will resonate with this vision and decide to participate. But I feel that if I do not manifest it now, if I do not share it, if I do not plant it as a seed in the collective field, we will never know if it was possible. And I would rather try and fail than never try at all. Let us create together the alchemy of a new state of consciousness. Welcome to Verta Will.